Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC College Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am their host that you hear every good Monday morning, evening, or afternoon, or whenever you choose to listen to this. I'm typically the Monday guy around here at GSMC, so it's Ethan, man. We're back at it again, talking some college football, and fear not, because it is not going to be a big doom and gloom podcast like it feels like it might have been for the past month. And it will be looking at the promising future and the current talent at the quarterback position today, alongside some discussions that I've been having with the COVID test for college in general, just the whole outland, like the whole land of college, the whole college sports land is getting standardized basic COVID testing protocols. We're talking about that. And to end it off, we're going to be talking about the SEC and what they have been going through as trying to figure out what they are going to do with the non-conference games, if they're going to play non-conference, if they're just going to play only conference games, or are they going to do a mixture? That's coming up at the end of the podcast as well. But first, we have to talk about the future. So, right now, coming in, we're going to have some college players come in soon for the quarterback position. And everybody's trying to figure out who is going to be great, who is going to not be great, who are the best of the best that we're going to see out of the college football quarterback rooms. So, class of 21. Here's the SI All-American rankings for the top 10 quarterbacks in the said class. So this was compiled over the few months worth of data in addition to cycling back through their 2019 season. So this is the All-American class for 2021. Number 1 is Caleb Williams out of Washington, D.C. for Gonzaga College. He's a 6'2", 210 quarterback who's committed to Oklahoma. Williams earns the mark as the top passer in this rankings. He grades out highly in most, if not all, of the position-specific and critical factors. Blessed with an above-average frame and bulk, Williams' athleticism is elite. However, his arm talent is downright special. From being able to alter his arm slots, manipulate ball speeds, and deliver throws with proper ball placement and accuracy to all levels, he can fit in many different offensive structures that call for him to play in and out of the pocket. Williams has Gumby-like body flexibility to execute off-pattern throws along with excellent functional mobility, but to also threaten defenses with excellent run traits. He should continue to develop, and he projects to be a high-end college starter. And if you don't know who Gumby is, maybe think, if you're a DC Comics fan, maybe. If you like DC Comics, you may know who Gumby is, but think like Plastic Man, or for Marvel, Mr. Fantastic. Real stretchy guy, stretchy dude. So they kind of bounce off people left and right. I feel like Alvin Kamara has that kind of body type too. He just bounces off defenders, and it's like his body bends but never breaks. Number 2 on this list is Brock Vandegrift from Bogart, Georgia, from Prince Avenue Christian School. And he's 6'3", 200 pounds even, and he's committed to Georgia. I remember hearing about this guy over 92.9 The Game, the radio station here in Atlanta. They talk about a lot of local high school talented individuals in their own right. So they say he's possessing a promising frame that appears to have gotten even stronger this offseason. Vandergrift is an elite decision maker with ideal physical tools. The Peach State native has a plus arm strength and seamlessly ties his lower half with his eyes and arm while clicking through his progressions from the pocket. Not to be restricted, Vandergrift possesses a good feel for the perimeter pressure and enough athleticism and mobility to maneuver through traffic and produce off schedule. He is a good 2-count release and allows him to drive the ball to targets through the third level and from the boundary to the field. Vandergrift projects well as a trigger man in an offense with 3-step and 5-step rhythm concepts in the passing game. Now, this guy really might be the truth. A lot of people think that he might be the best pure passer that Georgia's had in years. And that's saying something because, they had Aaron Murray and they had Stafford. So it's kind of been a while since they've had a passer that's been talked about this much. And I know it's just a commit. He could always change. But if he does go, I'm interested to see what he will be able to do. And I'm sure he'll be one of those true freshman quarterbacks that will dazzle us if things work out for him. Next on the list is J.J. McCarthy from Bradenton, Florida, in IMG Academy. He's 6'2", 190. He's committed to Michigan. So McCarthy won't wow anyone on the hoof, yet he impresses many with his skill set on tape. The Michigan commit can click quickly through progressions before triggering to pitch to targets with plus velocity and anticipation. As the ball spins well from his hand, he has maximum confidence in his right arm, which allows him to threaten all 3 levels each snap. His quick feet and strong base allows him to be comfortable in the pocket with good feel, yet he attacks the edges in their reactionary phase off and throw with accuracy on the move. So he shows a very quick transfer from passer to runner and can keep an offense on the field with his legs. McCarthy has the arm talent and mental processing ability to fit well in a Wolverines offensive coordinator Josh Gaddis' system, predicated on blending RPO concepts and shot plays. Next, Ty Thompson from Gilbert, Arizona, from Mesquite. He's 6'4", 200 pounds even, and he's committed to Oregon. So Thompson impressed the SI staff on hand at the Elite 11 finals in Nashville earlier this month, which only fortified what he displays on tape. He commands attention just from his prototypical size and frame alone. However, there's more to the Oregon commit than the physical stature. Thompson has exceptional arm strength and a powerful stroke, which allows him to naturally drive throws downfield. He can distribute with good anticipation in mid-range concepts, and his velocity affords him to also attack tight voids. His above-average functional mobility and solid feel for the pressure leads him to factor in the reactionary phase, where he can alter his arm slot while on the move. He has the physical tools and a skill set to shine in the vertical passing game, while allowing the Oregon offense staff to scheme up multiple shot plays each week. So he's going to be one of those guys, because anybody who really goes to Oregon, goes to Washington State, Washington, these guys, you got to watch out for the Pac-12 quarterbacks, because they can really sling it and they're going to put up large numbers no matter where they are. Number 5 on this list is Drake May, Charlotte, North Carolina, from Myers Park. He's 6'5", 210, a big dude committed to North Carolina, so he wants to stay home. Blessed with ideal size and plus athleticism, May has the potential to blossom into an all-conference starter in college. He can click from reads 1 to 2 quickly with a good mental processing, while standing tall in the pocket with strong lower base. The future Tar Heel has a tight trigger and can push the ball vertically downfield with good placement. May can reset when moved off his midline and has lower half flexibility to alter his launch points. With his basketball background, here we go again with the basketball stuff, he possesses a solid transfer from passer to runner with a good stride and enough quickness to elude threats in his linear track. May has the tools to project well as an instinctive distributor in an offensive structure featuring quick game concepts, with UNC offensive coordinator Phil Longo prefers, while blending in vertical passing concepts as well. So incoming is number 6, Sam Huard from Bruin, Washington, Kentucky, or from Kennedy Catholic School. 6'2", 180, kind of on the smaller side, committed to Washington. So although he possesses average size, Huard is regarded as perhaps the best deep ball passer in this class. He is a left-handed thrower with a smooth classic release, and the ball achieves an excellent spin rate from his mitt. The Washington commit has outstanding mental prowess in the pre-snap phase, where he leverages coverages and alignments versus his route concepts and protections. Huard is most comfortable working in the pocket as his set launch point and delivers deep balls with appropriate arc, trajectory, ball speed, and proper placement. He's rhythmic in the mid-range game and has just enough functional mobility to threaten defenses on the move, or has a fair runner in the reactionary phase. His mental processing skills as an anticipatory passer and ideal deep ball execution on shot plays project him to be a prime fit for Washington's new offensive structure. Now, remember, I keep telling y'all, Pac-12 has a lot of people that you need to pay attention to at certain positions. Corners, quarterbacks, defensive ends, they come from a lot from the Pac-12. Watch out. Next, Tyler Bruchner, I believe is the pronunciation, Tyler Bruchner, from La Mesa, California, in Helix, that's his school. He's 6'2", 200 pounds, committed to Notre Dame. So he did tear his ACL in 2018, but Bruchner had a strong lower half that allows him to make explosive moves inside and outside the pocket. He can elude the rush with solid feel, get off his midline, and either reset quickly to pitch or deliver well when flushed. While his stroke and delivery can be inconsistent at times, the Irish pledge possesses plus arm strength. Bruchner has solid mental processing and mid-range concepts, along with the ability to pitch to perimeters with anticipation. His lower half also affords him excellent transfer quickness from passer to runner and allows play callers to scheme up quarterback designed runs in his rushing attack due to his run traits. Bruchner has the skill set to execute RPO concepts in zone read option, and even quarterback power concepts in the run game. So he's kind of a jack of all trades. And although he does have some inconsistency, a guy that 6'2", 200, he's pretty stocky and can run really well. He might be a bit of a Cam type, but not the Cam body per se, but maybe the mentality. Just think about that. And number 8 is Kyle McCord from Philadelphia, from St. Joseph's Preparatory School. He's 6'3", 205, and is committed to Ohio State, the Ohio State, as they like to say. McCord is among the most pure rhythmic passers in this year's class. He is a natural and classic ball distributor with good mental processing in the pre-snap phase. The Philly native understands route combinations, concepts from various sets, and pre-snap coverage alignments. He is decisive in the pocket, often reaching his launch point with his eyes and lower half in sync with his trigger before delivering with good anticipation and timing. The future Buckeye can change ball speeds well and be dynamic in mid-range concepts with a blend of touch and ball placement skills to deliver a consistent runner's ball to targets. McCord fits best in an offensive structure designed with the emphasis on defined quick game and mid-range passing concepts built on rhythm and timing. Number 9 on this list is Miller Moss from Santa Ana, California, from Mater Dei. 6'2", 200, committed to USC, so he is staying inside the state. Possessing a quick setup and delivery, Moss is a natural passer who is in his best form from inside the pocket. He generates a good spin rate and can show ideal accuracy in intermediate and quick concepts. His standard feel for the perimeter pressure sees him unafraid to climb up in the pocket while staying disciplined to maintain his eyes downfield and continue navigating through throwing lanes. So the USC pledge is quick and decisive when clicking through his half-field reads and delivers with a consistently appropriate ball speed, arc, and placement. While he doesn't possess elite physical tools, Moss projects well as a triggerman who excels with rhythmic and timing-based concepts in a defined mid-range passing game to the middle of the field. Number 10 on this list, finally, is Preston Stone, Dallas, Texas Parish. Stone is committed to SMU. He is one of the most exciting offensive players in his class, and he is more playmaker than disciplined passer at this point, as he will take some chances with the football and generate boom or bust plays. He is an athletic dual threat type who can alter his arm slot with plus release quickness and shows good second and third level vision. Stone is great for a reactionary phase, and he's almost prefers to be off schedule to allow more room for his creativity and mobility. He possesses impressive run traits and can elude defenders to reel off chunk plays with above average speed in the run game. The SMU staff will likely be able to continue with a run a quick up-tempo passing attack while blending in quarterback runs with the confident Stone. So there you have it. Those are your top 10 guys coming into class of 2021. And if they do stay on their teams that they committed to, that is. But it looks like we're going to have a nice quarterback class coming in. We're going to take a first break, and then we're going to come back talking about the current class of 2020 and seeing where they rank.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
We are back, GSMC College Football Nation, and we are just wrapping up what we just came back from, which was talking about the top 10 recruits for 2021. And now we're going to get into what our current college football quarterback room looks like and who are the top guys coming into the 2020 season after having such a spectacular last year with Joe Burrow leading to the NFL and Tua Tagovailoa also doing the same, and also, Justin Herbert. And you saw other guys go as well. A big-time quarterback class that may turn out to be something special. So here are the top 10, and they're just rankings, and they're not based off of NFL potential. These rankings are supplied by Pro Football Focus. Check them out if you want to read more of their brilliant content. So number 10 on this list is Lane Hatcher from Arkansas State. So in his first season seeing the field, Alabama transfer Lane Hatcher had shown why he was so highly coveted by one of the college football's greatest coaches in Nick Saban. Hatcher's outside the numbers passing jumps out as good as known greats in college football. So on such passes, he ranks behind only Joe Burrow and Justin Fields in Pro Football Focus grade, and his 14.4% big-time throw rate is the best in the country and over 7 percentage points above the FBS average. Hatcher's anticipation was great on his downfield passing and paved the way for his accurate plus pass rate to rank second in the country behind Joe Burrow and ahead of the third place by over 3.5 percentage points. His helped the Red Wolves end the year with a 8-5 record and a bowl victory despite owning the lowest graded offensive line and defense that has been in Pro Football Focus college era, and that was since 2014. The 9th player on this list is Peyton Ramsey / Michael Penix Jr. in Indiana. So Indiana football took a big turn for the better in 2019, largely because of the play of the quarterbacks Peyton Ramsey and Michael Penix Jr., who both ranked among the 25 best signal callers in the game during 2019. Penix Jr. was given the starting job to open the season, but featured in just 6 games due to an injury, When on the field, though, Penix was one of the college football's best in limiting opportunities for the defense to make a play, producing the 5th lowest turnover-worthy play rate. Ramsey just finished his junior year with the Hoosiers, and ended regular season play strong, producing a grade above 79 in each of his last 6 games, leading to the 2nd-best grade in the country from weeks 8 through 14. As shown in the Gator Bowl against Tennessee, Ramsey's pocket presence was one of the greatest attributes that he has, avoiding sacks, creating gains off scrambles, or throwing a dime when a 300-pound lineman is chasing after him. Watching both quarterbacks, you can see Ramsey and Penix have a similar strength in that their stick throws passes that are to a receiver facing the quarterback or working back to them are among the best in the country. The two combine to be the highest graded passing unit on these passes and are among the top 15 quarterbacks in regard to accurate pass rate. Penix will likely regain the starting job in 2020 when he is healthy, but regardless of who is the starter, Indiana is in great hands at the quarterback position. Number 8, Dustin Crum from Kent State. The once backup quarterback Dustin Crum saw his first start back in week 2 when he was told right before kickoff that he was replacing the previously named starter Woody Barrett. In his time on the field, Crum produced the lowest turnover-worthy play rate in all of college football, and safe to say the move paid dividends. He executed an offense that was heavily integrated play action. Over half of his dropbacks were play-action passes, running the fake at the 4th highest rate in college football. Play-action passes are far more effective than non-play-action passes, and Crum is one of the best in taking advantage of that. In addition to being the 2nd highest graded quarterback on these plays, Crum owns the 3rd highest rate of accurate passes thrown. When there wasn't a receiver open, Crum wasn't going to force the ball either. He scrambled the most among quarterbacks and picked up the 4th most yards per carry, that was a 9.2, as well as the 2nd highest rate of first downs or touchdowns at a 47%. Behind an offensive line that ranks 104th in pass blocking grade, Crum was hit with pressure significantly, though sometimes he brought on himself. Pro Football Focus faulted Crum for 11 sacks that tied the 4th most in the country, and he can improve his pocket presence next season. Crum may start getting some NFL looks for real. Number 7 is Brock Purdy from Iowa State. So Brock Purdy came out of nowhere in the middle of the Cyclones' 2018 season. During their Week 6 matchup against Oklahoma State, Purdy was pulled off of the bench and thrown into action, and he looked like a seasoned vet as opposed to a true freshman he actually was. He started the rest of the year and finished the season 11th at the position in Pro Football Focus. While he regressed some in 2019, Purdy is still among the 10 best quarterbacks to return in 2020. When passing in rhythm and getting through his progressions, Purdy has been arguably the best in the country. His in-rhythm negatively graded play rate from the last 2 seasons combined leads all FBS quarterbacks, as he is also the only one to produce a negatively and positively graded play rate that ranks in the top 10. So Purdy's calmness on these plays was evident in 2019. He had one of the lowest times to throw averages passing in rhythm and has posted the 3rd lowest uncatchable pass rate in the country. All that said, Purdy has to stop heaving desperation throws when the pass rush gets to him and forces him to move. When Purdy is forced off his spot and sometimes throws on the run, he ranks 3rd to last in that grade. This is the biggest red flag for the Cyclone, but the good obviously outweighs the bad and could easily skyrocket him up the 2021 draft boards through next season. Next is Sam Ehlinger from Texas. So while Texas isn't back to contending form, Sam Ehlinger is doing his part and had one of the top seasons Pro Football Focus saw in 2019. After the Longhorns' blowout win against Utah in the Alamo Bowl, his grade improved to 90.5, which is 6th best in the country. Pro Football Focus recently debuted their wins above average metric at both the professional and collegiate levels, and this only validates his great play in 2019. Regardless of position, Ehlinger was the 5th most valuable in wins above average. and he was the most valuable among those to play only 12 games. Ellinger can hit his receiver in stride across the field like most can't. For example, on a crossing route, his 91.8 grade ranks 4th in the FBS and is one of 9 to be above 80, including horizontal passes. Ellinger is second to accurate plus pass rate behind Joe Burrow. At 6'3", 230, Ellinger is a quarterback who can handle designed runs, but can bail on the pocket on a touch too soon. As a result, he has been placed among the top 15 in his position in both 10-plus yard runs and broken tackles, while the style of play won't carry over to the NFL level, is working for him in college. Number 5 is Tanner Morgan out of Minnesota. Tanner Morgan emerged on the college football landscape during Week 8 of the 2018 season as a redshirt freshman when Minnesota starter Zach Anarkstad was knocked out due to injury. So Morgan started the rest of the year and was below average, ranking 104 in passing grade. This season is a different story for Morgan, improving his passing grade rank all the way to 4th, tied with Tua Tagovailoa. His 2019 season has been carried by his performance under pressure. He ranked 2nd in Pro Football Focus passing grade under pressure behind only Heisman winner Joe Burrow this season. His pocket presence and footwork were vastly improved upon, leading the way to the 3rd highest rate of accurate pass plus pass thrown under pressure. So, perfectly placed passes to the receiver, that is. So, quarterback performance under pressure is unstable year to year, but the way Morgan handled it in 2019 gives a lot of reason to believe he is near the top again in 2020. The scheme couldn't be better for him also. Minnesota executes run-pass options, the RPO, at the nation's 4th highest rate. And RPO is an extension of the run game, and the quarterback has the option to either hand the ball off or pull for a quick pass. Among 74 qualifying FBS quarterbacks, Morgan ranks 1st in passing grade while he pulls on an RPO. He took full advantage of these plays, averaging over 3.5 more yards per attempt than the FBS average. Number 4 is Sam Howell from North Carolina. Sam Howell played his true freshman season from start to finish and showed off his rocket launch of an arm. Through the Tar Heels bowl game, Howell has produced 21 touchdowns that came on throws of 20 or more yards downfield, the 2nd most in the FBS. He's even thrown as far as 40 yards downfield, finding similar success with 6 such touchdowns, which is the most in the FBS. Howell turned 19 years old earlier in that season, but you won't think that when you're watching him throw against man-to-man coverage. His Pro Football Focus grade against man schemes is the best in college football, and yes, that is the best even amongst Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, etc. Howell's true freshman performance season has made him prime top 10 candidate in the 2022 draft class, and lead draft analysis at Pro Football Focus, Mike Reiner, listed him as the 7th best from the 80 quarterbacks to play in bowl games as far as pro potential goes. Number 3 on this list is Jamie Newman, who was recently transferred to Georgia. So Jamie Newman recently caused chaos in college football when he unexpectedly announced his decision to transfer from Wake Forest to Georgia. The decision was something that really caught a lot of people off guard, but it happened. So through the first 11 weeks, though, college football's highest graded quarterbacks were Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, and Jamie Newman. He ended the year slower than the start, but Newman is still one of college football's biggest breakouts players of the season. The tight window passing he put on display has been next level and a large reason why he is highly sought after on the transfer market when he was. Joe Burrow is far and away the highest graded quarterback throwing in a tight window, but Newman is second and third is nowhere near him. He also limited his uncatchable pass rate to the 4th lowest. Newman has some rushing ability that has seen the 8th most designed runs for a quarterback with 128. While some say it's his rushing that can be his greatest weapon, it is clearly his arm. He's the 2nd highest graded on 20-plus yard throws and was worth 12th most wins above replacement in college football. Despite playing in a fewer amount of games than everybody else, as said, if if you were Oregon or Oklahoma, you would be setting the house. But of course, Georgia was the one who walked away victorious in that exchange. Now it's Justin Fields at number 2. So while the Buckeyes came up just short in the college football playoff title game appearance in 2019, they could be optimistic for 2020 considering they'll be returned with the second best quarterback in the passing grade for Pro Football Focus last year in Justin Fields. The greatest strength of the second-year quarterback is his pocket passing. In addition to owning the highest pocket passing grade, he threw the third lowest rate of uncatchable passes when passing beyond the sticks. Fields' patience in the pocket shines, and pressure doesn't throw him off his game like most other quarterbacks due to his elite athleticism. Under duress, Fields' passing grade is still near the top at 7th, and he averaged over 7.4 yards per scramble. Fields has been near perfect when he throws a quick pass in 2 seconds or less, ranking first in grade and throwing the lowest rate of uncatchable passes. He is second for now, but he is by no means locked into that spot. 9 of his 14 games have ended with a passing grade above 80. At the level that he's playing at, he'll enter the season as one of the highly coveted prospects of the 2021 draft class and could end the year as the most coveted. Now, without further ado, of course, number 1, I think everybody was expecting this, is Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. So having Clemson's Trevor Lawrence at number 1 was the easiest decision probably ever. Lawrence wowed any and all football fans as a true freshman in 2018, posting the best grade by a true freshman in the pro football college era. And then he topped that in 2019 with a little bit better of a grade. So the hype surrounding Lawrence entering the year was some of the biggest in recent memory for a sophomore, and that may have gotten to him a bit through week 4. He ranked 48th in the FBS in overall grade. From week 5 on, Lawrence ranked 2nd in grade to Joe Burrow. Lawrence is 6'6", but arguably the best running quarterback in college football. He owns the highest rushing grade at his position among Power 5 quarterbacks, and if it weren't for his 67-yard rushing touchdown against Ohio State in the college football playoff, Clemson may have not pulled off that victory. It's hard to find a negative in Lawrence's passing game. He can hit tight windows with ease, remain elite against the blitz, create a play when nothing is developing, etc. As for now, he's the favorite to go number 1 overall in 2021, and honestly could have been the first overall pick in 2019 or 2020 if he was allowed to enter in the NFL draft. So there you have it. Those are your top 10 for the 2020 quarterbacks across all Power 5 FBS schools. All right. So we're going to take another break and we're going to get into what exactly is going on with coronavirus and how the NCAA is trying to handle it.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, college football fans and GSMC fans alike, we are back here with the GSMC College Football Podcast, making a fan sandwich, if you know what I mean. And now we're getting back into it real nice and real smooth. So we are talking about the Power 5, and they released their universal testing standards across the board. So what does that all entail? Well, I'm about to let you know what it all comes from. So this comes from staff writer for SI, Ross Dillinger, from providing this information. So College football players who test positive for COVID-19 this fall will be required to miss at least 10 days of competition, and that number is even higher, a full 2 weeks for those who are found to have had contact with a person who tested positive for COVID-19. These requirements are part of the medical document of the Power 5 conferences that have drafted up to add uniformity to the virus testing protocols and response procedures. So Sports Illustrated obtained a copy of the draft of the document from July 8th, and the document is not finalized, but is expected to be released soon by the Power 5 and the NCAA, which are working in concert to create universal minimum testing standards. So it's a 6-page document and outlines weekly in-season testing requirements, response protocols for positive tests, contact tracing plans, and considerations for game cancellations. So this document is meant to guide instructions or institutions in the minimum necessary requirements needed to participate in athletics for the incoming year, the document reads. So college teams will be required. So here we go. College teams will be required to test football players within 72 hours of games using the standard PCR test. Game officials in football and basketball should also be tested weekly because of their close contact with athletes, the document says. So far, so good. This sounds feasible. This sounds reasonable. And that just means that everybody on the team playing the game will get tested at least twice a week, so to speak, I would think, depending on the schedule. And, of course, officials will be once a week. And that's for football and basketball. So that's an interesting little wrinkle in there. If basketball somehow finds its way back in the fall or at the start of the fall, mid-winter, basketball is technically a spring sport, but I digress. The document, however, does not require tests for coaches, though staff members must wear a mask on the sideline if they are not tested in the same way as athletes are. I repeat, coaches are not required to take tests as players are, though staff members must wear a mask on the sidelines if they do not do the same test. So, as for other high-risk sports, athletes should be tested within 72 hours of the first game of a week's set of games. So, those sports include football, basketball, rowing, soccer, wrestling, volleyball, field hockey, ice hockey, lacrosse, rugby, squash, and water polo. Meanwhile, intermediate and low-risk sports may test at a less frequent interval, as the document says, without expounding upon it. Athletes who have been previously tested positive for COVID-19 are not required to test weekly unless they show symptoms, the document says. So, those who test positive must isolate for at least 10 days, like we said, from onset symptoms, positive test, until they are gone, at least 3 days without symptoms, which document defines as resolution of fever without use of fever-reducing medications and improvement of respiratory symptoms, i.e. coughing, shortness of breath. So, no Tylenol, no ibuprofens, no Motrins, no, fever-reducing medicines of any kind is allowed to result in you're free to go. Like, you're not free to go if you're doing that as a result of fever reduction. You need to naturally lose the fever after a set amount of days of having it, of course. Those found to have had high-risk contact with people who have tested positive will be quarantined for 14 days. This 14-day quarantine is mandatory. Even if those quarantine test negative for the virus, they must still complete a 14 days without competition, a significant restriction that could knock out large swaths of a football team. Institutions may consider testing contacts during quarantine if the local testing supply is adequate. However, this does not shorten or remove the need for the 14-day quarantine period outlined in the document. So, a high-risk contact is defined as those who are within 6 feet of an infected person for at least 15 minutes while one or both parties is not wearing a mask. This includes anyone participating in face-to-face or contact drills against each other. If an athlete or staff member becomes symptomatic between testing and competition, they should be isolated. If athletes develop symptoms during competition, they should be isolated, and that information should be shared within the current opponent to assist in decisions on how to proceed with the competition. The document says as for out-of-season testing, this is being left up to the school. According to the document, out of season is defined by the time frame outside of mandatory workouts and games. So the document details several conditions that will result in a school discontinuing competition and or complete seasons. So one is the lack of ability to isolate new positive tests or positive cases, I should say, or quarantine high-risk cases on campus. Number two is the inability to perform weekly testing. Number three is campus-wide or local community test rates that are considered unsafe by local public health officials. Number four is inability to perform adequate contact tracing. Number five is local public health officials state that there is an inability for the hospital infrastructure to accommodate a surge of COVID-related hospitalizations. Numbers 3 and 5 are great concern for athletic administrators, as detailed in a story last week. Administrators' top concern is the rising cases nationwide will overwhelm local health departments. This includes inundated hospitals and testing labs impacting colleges' very own virus-related supplies and potentially slowing test results as detailed in this story published Tuesday. So we're all familiar with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey Greg Sankey noted these issues Monday in an interview on Paul Feinbaum's show. It was not about the death rate or the illness's impact on young people. It's about the overwhelmed public health departments. And he says we need to see the ability for our hospitals and healthcare systems to manage what's going on with COVID-19, he says. And to be completely honest, this has been the biggest missed talking point about this whole thing for quite some time. We need to remind ourselves that this isn't always about if you can survive the virus or if you can move past it by your own or just, isolate or just social distance if you get it. It's not that serious if you're young, but you got to remember that this isn't about being able to fight it off with your immune system. It's about thinking about you have to go to the hospital if you show symptoms and if it gets worse. And if a lot of people get it and there's not enough people to man hospitals to help take care of everybody who's getting it, it becomes a massive, massive backloaded problem. And that's what we saw in Italy months ago. And they somehow have found a way to keep it under wraps now. But before, it was very, very, very tough what was going on. And people were looking like it was the end of the world. Thankfully, it was not the end of the world. And, great scientists and great minds have come together and helped things out there. But here we are still dealing with problems that could lead to another situation like that on our own soil. So SEC athletic directors met Monday, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, which included a host of contingency models talking about how are they going to deal with their schedules. Of course, we know the Pac-12 and Big Ten have already decided to move to a conference-only schedule in 2020, and a route that provides them with both, one, a flexibility for interrupted games, and two, a uniform testing standard to follow. So the document obtained by Sports Illustrated gives the 65 Power 5 conference schools at least a universal standard. Group of 5 conferences and the NCAA are expected to release their own guidelines too. The American Athletic Conference, for example, already announced part of its protocol Thursday, and the league will be required all teams to test athletes at least 72 hours before a game. So just to review, so people know what we're going on here, it is 10 days minimum if tested positive. So that doesn't mean like you just take your test, you test positive, it's 10 games minimum. If you are around somebody in close proximity for at least 15 minutes of somebody who tested positive and was a high-risk person, it's 14 days isolation, no competition whatsoever. You are locked in for 14 days. And the on-field ones are really interesting. So if somebody starts showing symptoms or there's a concern on the field, immediately everybody has to be alerted, which makes sense. And it's up to the game, how each party and of course the competition in the game considers it before the game is completed or how it will work out. So like I said, a lot of things are moving and shaking and you don't really know what it is. But what we do know is that what's the biggest thing to take away from is what could result in discontinuing competition or complete seasons. As in I said already, the lack of ability to isolate new positive cases or quarantine high contact risk cases on campus. So that could involve a whole lot of things, not just athletes, but if the schools can't find a way to contain just regular on-campus students, if they have students on campus, as some universities are still planning to do so. 2 is the inability to perform weekly testing. 3 is campus-wide or local community test rates are considered unsafe by local health officials. Number 4 is the inability to perform adequate contact tracing. Number 5, of course, is local public health officials state that there is an inability for the hospital infrastructure to accommodate a surge of COVID-related hospitalizations. So those are some big money reasons that every athletic director, every official, every student should be aware of, because things can get bad real fast, especially number 5. I was talking to my sister who goes to UGA. Shout out to my sister Paige. She was telling me recently that UGA in Athens has one hospital that connects to so many different counties that operates for all those counties' local hospital. And if COVID rises really, really bad there, it's going to possibly be very problematic, as it is literally one hospital for at least like an hour or so outside of the county limits. And if there's a bunch of college students coming back and there's already a big number of rising of cases around the area, things may not be looking up. So that's just something to look out for every other college facility, because even my college, there's not a hospital down the road as close as you would like it to be, and you may have to be rushed to urgent care or however the case may be for your current area and the college that you may go to. And if you are somebody who is going to a high profile school, just be careful, because you don't really know what exactly the situation is across the whole county or whatever city you live in, because unfortunately a lot of things affect you outside, and like the college bubble can sort of blind you in how effective you are safely put there until times get rough. But we're going to take our final break here, and we're going to come back out talking about the SEC and what they spoke about earlier this week as regarding to non-conference games.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. It's still Ethan here on this good Monday afternoon, evening, morning, or whenever, talking SEC right now, because they've been in the news as they might be the biggest domino to potentially fall depending on how they make this decision. Now, it won't be until really July that they come up with the big time decision whether or not they are going to continue on with the season. So late July is a decision that should be reached on it. But for now, they met up earlier this week talking about 3 plans. They brought 3 plans to this meeting in Birmingham that revolve around what they are going to do with the schedule this season. So the 3 plans all revolve around how many non-conference games are they going to play. The biggest ones to come out of it are these 3. It's an 8-game, 0 non-conference games played across the board. Then there is a 9-game season where you potentially have they still want to keep the marquee game, so they're trying to figure that one out. So it may include 10 games. That's the 3rd one. So 8 games and 2 non-conference games, referred to as the 8-2 model. And that was one of the many models, of course, discussed on Monday. And barring a full 12-game schedule, 3 models eventually settled down. So there's a lot of things discussed here at this meeting, but eventually 3 models came out. So the 8-game conference only schedule and the 9 or 10 game that would preserve at least one scheduled matchup with the Power 5 conference program. So the SEC had already lost a few games from Power 5 within the Pac-12's decision to hold a conference only season. So Alabama, USC is not happening. Texas A&M and Colorado is not happening. The league is attempting to preserve the remaining 13 Power 5 conference games, including the aforementioned 4 September 12 games, and most notably the 4 traditional rivalries with the ACC. So that means your Georgia Tech game. That means your Florida State game. That means your South Carolina Clemson game, your Kentucky Louisville game. You get it. The other 5 games are Arkansas Notre Dame, Georgia, Virginia, Ole Miss, Baylor, Missouri, BYU, and Vanderbilt, Kansas State. So Monday's meeting in Birmingham spanned the entire day and encompassed the assortment of topics, which including various contingency models for the fall 2020 season, and the reports from both the conference's medical panel and the game operations group. One athletic director described the leagues having narrowed dozens of contingencies to a handful, but it's all still conjecture. And another administrator says it's just speculation. It's so speculative. I think that if we knew when we could get it started, we would have a lot easier time. So despite the rising number of cases nationwide, many of the hot spots in the SEC's 11-straight footprint, the consensus among administrators is that the communities and the athletes are strongly in favor of playing football this fall. The league is targeting late July for this decision, like I said, and this is coming from the commissioner, Greg Sankey. So the SEC's decision could create the most significant domino effect yet in the country. A variety of athletic directors are watching the league very closely, and from small college conferences to even high school associations. One associated member from Louisiana High School Athletic Executive Director Eddie Boney said that we are waiting to see what the SEC announces. I do think there is a domino effect. So their decision hinges not only on the decline of overall case numbers, but also the success of professional sports teams, so many of which are experiencing problems as they return to practice. Contingencies discussed during Monday's meeting vary greatly, from potential kickoff dates starting in September and running to mid-October. An 8-game conference-only schedule would provide the most testing, continuity, and flexibility. A 10-game conference-only schedule is unlikely to gain much support because of its rigors, but is one of the many on the proposal list. And just a tidbit on the whole watching professional sports teams. This is why the bubble in the NBA is so important, just because technically a bubble is not being made for college football, at least on the surface level, right? They're not putting them all in different bubbles in themselves, but trying to go non-conference is essentially trying to limit spread to only in certain areas or however that makes sense, right? They're trying to limit travel, limit potential spread the best way they can while also maintaining some sort of a semblance of a football season in college for the fall. And seeing how the NBA can do something at least gives them some grand scheme, some idea how they handle it. The NFL, of course, is also being watched right now as it's almost go time for the NFL and how they are handling their own side of the football ranks in the coronavirus. And once the NFL shows what they can do, college football may find more comfortability in some decisions that they have to make as well. But of course, college football does technically have to play for the NFL. So it is kind of a bit of a cat and mouse game where all of football is the mouse and coronavirus is the cat. So their decision is greatly impacted on whether and how many games they play. So in a 10-game all-SEC slate, teams would keep their scheduled 8 conference games while adding 2 more teams from the opposite division. In this scenario, an SEC team would play all but 3 of its conference members, and one athletic director described this plan as laughable. Even a 9-game conference-only schedule is getting pushback from league administrators. The AD says that, or the AD does say, so says another AD, I don't think we can close the door on anything right now. And this is a sentiment that a lot of different athletic directors, even coaches, have said, that you have to keep as many doors open as possible because you don't know which ones are going to shut themselves closed. The more preferred plans, of course, are the 9 or 10 game schedule with 1 or 2 non-conference games respectively. But there are issues with that too. Testing protocols may vary from conference to conference because of limited resources and availability. And of course, we know now that the Group of 5 and the FCS programs may not follow the same procedures as those in the Power 5, but the Power 5 and NCAA have worked on this minimum testing standard that will be released soon. A schedule with non-conference games also poses logistical challenges, especially those early in the season, excluding the 4 traditional late season rivalries of the ACC. 8 of the SEC's 9 Power 5 matchups are scheduled for September. Any season delays or game interruptions in September could mean rescheduling games such as the LSU-Texas game and the Tennessee-Oklahoma game for later in the year, which may not be so easy. The NCAA Football Oversight Committee is working to create a more flexibility for these situations by extending the regular season by as such as 2 weeks. But the most important wrinkle in this entire situation is for the ACC, Big 12, and SEC to remain in lockstep. A conference-only decision from one of those leagues could have an adverse impact on the other 2. In the SEC, a conference-only option is certainly higher in the mix from the tone in the room, says one high-ranking SEC official. You can control your environment a lot more. But not all agree. Some SEC decision makers question the logic of a conference-only schedule. A few conference games call for long, expensive road trips, such as South Carolina, Texas A&M, Florida, Missouri, while several non-conference, non-Power 5 affairs are regionalized. Auburn has a game against Southern Mississippi, and also Mississippi State hosts Alabama A&M. South Carolina has both East Carolina and Coastal Carolina on their schedule, and Texas A&M plays North Texas. Meanwhile, many SEC leaders are vehemently against spring season, so describing it as a last resort and a fallback measure that poses a range of issues, the biggest of which is the impact of a spring season on the 2021 fall season, which we've already kind of covered. Administrators fear turning a 1-year problem into a 2-year problem. They say it's not going to work just quite flatly. And at least one SEC administrator went to Birmingham meeting championing the idea of a spring season, seeing it as the most likely way to actually play. I think spring is more viable than fall, one SEC AD told Sports Illustrated last week. We have currently scheduled is not realistic. If somebody told me we could play conference only in the fall, that would be great. But he's not so sure that we can play one game, let alone a full conference schedule. And many of these contingency models can fall for the elimination of games against Group of 5 or FCS teams. These are often referred to as the buy-in games, like we talked about last week, because SEC teams pay steep prices, sometimes as much as $1.5 million a game to their traveling competitors. In fact, the SEC teams in 2017 paid out more than $45 million in buy-in games. In buy games. According to the school NCAA reports obtained by SI, this year, Georgia is the only SEC school with 2 Power 5 programs on its schedule. All other teams played 3 games against Group of 5 or FCS squads. SEC teams could owe millions to those smaller clubs for cancellations. However, there's a potential out. In at least some of the game contracts, a change in league scheduling format could free the SEC team from its contractual responsibility, several administrators told Sports Illustrated. But the legal language still could meet opposition from stub Group of 5 or FCS opponents if the SEC doesn't move along with a non-conference games. If the league can play Power 5 opponents, the thinking goes, why can't it play others or at least honor the payout written into the game contract? From the standpoint of avoiding legal battles over millions in guarantees for games that doesn't happen, the SEC might be better off with no non-conference games at all. 8-game, 10-game, or 12-game schedule. The one thing is clear among SEC leaders. They are prepared for the proverbial icebergs to arise during the season and destroy whatever model they choose. So we're fighting the enemy that you can't see or smell, what the administrator said, and these are crazy times. And crazy times, these are indeed. I got to tell you, man, it's getting hot. And I don't mean at the temperature outside. I mean, it is here in Georgia. I don't know where you guys live. Maybe you should tell me that via social media. Where do you guys live and how's the temperature going? How's the status of the heat? I believe Arizona hit 114 sometime this week. It's getting insane. But Georgia's super hot. But when I mean hot, I mean as in the temperature is rising in the conversation room about this college football stuff. And honestly, it's not making me feel any better about things as of yet. But it seems like they are trying very, very hard. Very, 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 very hard to make this work. And I have to commend everybody who are trying their best to make something out of this, because at the end of the day, all you can do is cling on to the hope that a season is happening, because nobody wants to be around the Debbie Downer who's like, yeah, the season's not going to happen. You guys are worried too much, especially if you like play fantasy football. Like for me, side note, I play fantasy football. I host the fantasy football podcast on Fridays here at GSMC. I love the game. It makes me feel alive when I play all the time. Not to say I feel dead when I don't, but it gives me the extra life boost, so to speak. And nobody wants to be around the guy who thinks, why do you even care about this fantasy football season, about rankings and stuff? The season's not even going to happen. Don't be that guy. People like to have hope in their life. And I commend the NCAA for trying to keep hope alive and try to make this thing work, even if it's just for the dollars for them. But at least for the fans, we want something, right? We're trying our best, even in trying times. But this is it for the GSMC College Football Podcast for this week, coming from me. Thank you all for listening today, and I encourage you all to please rate and review the podcast wherever you choose to listen to us. I'm sorry, not Facebook. Well, I mean, you probably could click a link from Facebook from our social media, but Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find us, please leave a rate and review. 5 stars, 5 stars. Don't forget to follow our social media. So there we go. Facebook, our Twitter, college football from the GSMC. So it is at GSMC College Football for the Twitter handle. And you can find us on Facebook as well with similar verbiage. With that said, this is the GSMC College Football Podcast, and I'll see you all next week. Peace out, man.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From football to basketball, baseball to MMA, and even soccer. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast.